So it's funny, I was up at the institution at Chautauqua and I had came across again an artist that I had gotten to know pretty well at WestCon as a visiting artist by the name of Stanley Lewis, and he was one of the visiting artists up at Chautauqua. And can you believe this man brought his piece off for me while I was there. And on top of that, I met his relatives, and they've kept this piece in their family, which I think is an honor. As you could tell, I was just having fun in this piece. I didn't really care. I was just, drafting out this mirror and drawer and cloth on the table, and boom, I made like this pink wall. And that's that. For this experience, it's funny how you get to know like visiting artists. You learn a lot about their practice that they do residency. So this is at Weir Farm. This is actually in Wilton, Connecticut. It's the only National Historic Site dedicated to an impressionist by the name of Alden Weir. And this was the studio that I had the honor of making my little jewel masterpieces, as I called them, for that time because it was complete silence and isolation. I stayed in like a cottage, for sleep, and this was the studio. This is how I worked. I worked on multiple pieces at once. That's how I normally work when I have the space and the time. I work on multiple pieces at once. I don't just stick to one piece only. I mean, I plan everything on the wall. I do thumbnails, and then I mix my colors, and I go back and forth in between pieces. Um, Sometimes there's crying, but this was my work process while I was up at Weir Farm, and I had a lot of visitors. It's funny, like at nighttime, this was before they had the cameras now, but the local high schoolers, they would come up and smoke pot, and I didn't care. They were kids. So I would go out on the property during my time there, and I would make these sketches. And from what I do recall, I did have both masonite and birch wood that I primed, and I would just sketch on the spot throughout the property. This is one of the spots I stood in. It's like one of the meadows, and yeah, I would just draw on the spot. I didn't really paint on the spot because, like I said, I selected my own colors and everything. But as you could tell in this piece, this was the Weir's palace car, and it was his portable studio that he would drag by, cattle up and down the property to paint in the wintertime. And yeah, and this piece got nominated for the Department of the Interior from Weir Farm. So that was an honor and a surprise when I heard about that. And, I really had a really amazing time while I was there. I think that was the most landscape drafting I've done on the spot in a while at the time. And I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed talking to the rangers. I enjoyed the local visitors. And as you can tell in this piece, I was heavily influenced by Asian art. I gifted this to my late professor, Robert Alberetti, and his family because, I was his assistant at one point, and he was all about color theory. And I said, well, what more can I do than to help this man, while he was on his way out? He was sick, and his beautiful family. And I gave them this painting because they deserved it and they were good people to me. And this just reminded me of like their personality and my love of painting and their love of making painting their careers in ceramic. So this was at the Secret Garden at Weir Farm. Like I said, I was just thriving and having fun here. Like I said, I would draw on the spot. This is a fountain, and I still go up here with my child to visit. We do like little photo ops and stuff. It's a great place to take photos if you're into like seasonal photos and stuff. Bring your family up, it's free. But this piece was actually the one where a big gigantic tree branch fell like right behind me over half a trunk of a tree. I never got to finish it because I had to like pack up my stuff and like leave because I was kind of petrified. I almost got killed by a falling tree where the ranger kind of ran down and like checked to see if I was still alive, and I was fine. But yeah, I this was right by the Weir main estate, And yeah, I just had fun drafting out all these trees, and then I would take it back to the studio and I would create my own little world, as you can tell. I made a smaller version of this, and it's with one of my other mentees who was an art historian. And this was another painting of I called it tree group because it was like a group of trees like out in the meadow, and I just made my own world of what it was. It kind of has like a Wolf Kahn influence, but at the time I wasn't thinking about Wolf Kahn, and this was right before I went to Vermont studio. So I just really embraced my time. I was invited back to give a lecture. I went to the library to give the lecture, and every once in a while they'll have special events for Weir Farm residents, art residencies, who have done you know time like I have. And yeah, so basically, again, another picture of what's on the premises of Weir Farm. They have like these ancient stone walls that I was kind of obsessed with drawing. So at times in some of these paintings, I kept the stone walls like as they were, as if I drew, so I didn't do so much layering of paint. That was a quick sketch painting that I did just on the spot. I was just, when you're in the zone of painting, and I think I painted like about 20 pieces within 2 weeks in drawing. So I did do a large drawing of the studio. It was graphite or charcoal. It was vine charcoal. I did it with this one. And I don't know what came of this work because I had to depart away from my artwork, like close to, I would say like 80% of my artwork I had to depart from. But, this was on, from the cottage view that I sketched on the porch. The cottage it was brand new, renovated, and it was a great space. I enjoyed my time there. And like I said, I was just capturing the environment as well as the buildings. At times, I would also draw on this small postcard paper that I mailed out to some of my friends, just as like little souvenirs that I made. And that was, I believe, Weir's studio. This was actually one of the later descendants that stayed on the property. If one of the sculptors of his studio, I can't recall his name right now, but I was drawing on the spot. This was also a large drawing from what I remember. And, like I said, when I draw on the spot, I just draw. So this was the underdrawing of, like I said, I was obsessed with drafting out the stone wall. It was just like, once I see stuff like this, I just keep on drawing and drawing. It's very technical. I try to make it very accurate and clear when I'm drawing on pencil like that before I decide if I'm going to go over with paint or whatever medium. And I was contemplating on leaving it as is, but I decided to eventually turn it into this. And yeah, it kind of looks like the trees are on fire, right? And then I have this purple wall and orange ground and this magenta background. So, like I said, none of it makes sense to probably the average person, but to me, when I'm in my zone with painting, I don't care. I was just in the zone. I was enjoying the environment, and I was enjoying these trees, obviously, for the way that I drew them and drafted them out and the way I painted them. And for something for 2 weeks for me to come up with like close to 20 pieces, or it was like 25 pieces I had made in 2 weeks, I was in there a lot in that studio. I only went down to like get pizza to eat at the time, or I would go to the nearby grocery store. But I was mostly in that studio nonstop, and I enjoyed it.